So everyone is losing their minds over Elon Musk claiming Grok 5 has a 10% shot at AGI. But in all that hype, almost nobody's asking the most obvious question. At the same time, XAI just quietly dropped Grok 4.20 with a new multi-agent system that might be a bigger deal than anything Grok 5 is promising. And most of us just scrolled right past it. Okay, let's get into it and separate the real signal from the noise. And there it is. This is the post from back in October 2025 that just lit up the entire AI community. A 10% chance of AGI. I mean, it's bold, it's specific, and it's a headline grabber for sure. But it immediately begs a really important question.
Exactly. 10% of what? You hear the term AGI thrown around all the time, but without a clear, agreed-upon definition, a percentage like this is, well, it's pretty much meaningless. To actually evaluate a claim like this, we need a proper framework. So before we can even touch Grok 5 or Grok 4.20, we have to get on the same page about what we even mean by AGI. So let's put together a simple, no-hype framework that we can actually use to measure these systems. Okay, this slide right here is absolutely key because it gives us a real yardstick. Instead of some fuzzy idea of smarter AI, we can now look at three specific things. Depth, how good is it at any one task? Breadth, how many different kinds of things can it do? And what's becoming super important, autonomy. How much can it do on its own without a human holding its hand? Keep these three in mind. They're going to be our guide for the rest of this.
Right, and here is a super critical distinction we have to make. There is a huge difference between where a model is today versus a bet on where it might be tomorrow. AGI readiness, that's a measure of its current skills against our three dimensions. Musk's 10% probability, on the other hand, is a prediction about the future. And you know what? Confusing these two things is where all the noise comes from.
So now let's see how this framework actually works in the real world. Because while everyone was busy speculating about the future with Grok 5, Grok 4.20 actually got released. And its new architecture is a pretty big step forward, especially on one of those key dimensions we just talked about.
So on paper, yeah, Grok 4.2 is seriously impressive. It's got a massive 2 million token context window. That means you can feed it gigantic documents or even an entire codebase in one shot. But the real game changer, the feature that stands out, is this new multi-agent mode. So how does this actually work? Well, when you give it a really complex problem, Grok 4.20 can actually spin up several internal agents. Think of them as little specialists. They discuss and work on the problem behind the scenes, and then a leader agent takes all their work and puts it together into one polished final answer. It's basically AI teamwork. Okay, so the fancy technical term for this is inference time scaling. All it really means is that instead of just thinking about the problem once, you're throwing more computer power at it to explore multiple ways of solving it at the same time. The result? You get a smarter, more reliable system, even if the core AI model itself hasn't fundamentally changed.
And this right here is the whole point. This multi-agent setup is a massive leap forward on the autonomy part of our AGI framework. The system is just way better at planning and coordinating on its own. It's a huge step for sure, but it's not the same thing as a leap in raw intelligence or its ability to do a million different things. All right, so with that solid understanding of Grok 4.2, let's turn our attention to Grok 5. And this is where we need to be really, really careful to separate what we actually know for a fact from what's just speculation and hype. This slide just lays it all bare. On the left, you've got the official word from XAI. Grok 5 is training on a monster of a supercomputer, and they're focusing heavily on reinforcement learning. That's pretty much it. On the right, you've got the claims from social media, the 10% AGI thing, and these hints about some new dynamic learning. The gap between what's confirmed and what's claimed is just enormous. And here is the reality check. For all the talk about Grok 5, there's no official definition of AGI being used, no public benchmarks we can look at, no model card, and absolutely no way for anyone outside of XAI to verify any of it. We are operating almost entirely on promises, not on data. So while we wait around for Grok 5, what can we actually measure? Let's ground this whole conversation in some real-world benchmark data that we have for the model that's actually out right now, Grok 4.2. Now this chart, this tells a really interesting story. This is the ARC AGI benchmark, and it's designed to test for fluid intelligence. So the ability to solve brand new problems, not just spitback facts. And you can see Grok 4.2 made a massive jump from Grok 4.
I mean, it more than doubled its score. But then, look at that gap that still remains to get to that 85% target, which is kind of the milestone for human-like reasoning. So, if we take everything, its benchmark scores, its really cool autonomy features, and we plug it all into our three-part framework, we can come up with a structured guess. Grok 4.20's current AGI readiness, it's sitting at roughly 30%. It's really strong on that autonomy piece, but it's still got a long way to go on depth and breadth, especially when it comes to novel problem solving.
And that brings us all the way back to the original claim. Musk's 10% isn't a statement that Grok is 10% of the way to AGI today. No, it's a bet. It's a probability estimate that it will cross some unspecified finish line in the future. And without knowing what that finish line is, the number is pretty much impossible to validate.
So this whole deep dive leaves us with a really powerful tool. The next time you see a headline or a post claiming that some new AI model is X% closer to AGI, there is one simple, critical question you should immediately ask yourself. By whose definition? Because if they can't define the goalposts, you can't possibly measure the progress. It is the single most important question you can ask to cut through all the hype and actually understand what is going on in the race to AGI.